What's the story, everyone? How are we all getting on? So Liverpool, Liverpool, Liverpool. Wow. What a result. What a win that was yesterday against Arsenal. 2-0 at the Emirates Stadium. A game where, to be honest, for the first half, Liverpool looked completely out of their depth. They were poor. They struggled. I mean, obviously Liverpool made a lot of changes coming into this game with the fact that Salah was gone to AFCON, Szoboszlai was injured, Virgil van Dijk had an illness pre-game. You also had Endo, who's been in superb form, missing, and you could see the balance of Liverpool's midfield was all over the place. McAllister wasn't really at the same level of what he was like earlier in the season, mainly because of injury, and he's only freshly back from injuries. And Liverpool's front three, like the dynamic of the front three looked way off, and Liverpool were really struggling. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And had Arsenal have a clinical, or if they did have a clinical striker or a player who knows how to put the ball in the back of the net, Arsenal probably are 2 or 3 goals up at half time, and the game is probably pretty much done. But Liverpool hung in there, they stuck in there, and even bringing on the likes of Bobby Clark and Connor Bradley, 2 youngsters, Liverpool still found a way to get the job done. And honestly, like, that is the biggest asset I can give this current Liverpool team, is that so many times this season, when the goings got tough, when Liverpool have been under the cosh, when we've looked like we're going to get beat, we find an answer. And that's why, to be honest, the longer the game was at 0-0, I was getting very, very confident that we were going to do it, because I've seen Liverpool probably in more difficult situations than they were in at the Emirates. Like, for example, we were a goal down against Newcastle earlier in the season, down to 10 men. We dug that one out and won. Against Tottenham, we were down to 9 men. We nearly dug that out and got a draw if it hadn't been for the Matip on goal. So, like, Liverpool have probably been in more difficult situations than they were in different games than they were against Arsenal yesterday, which is why I was actually quietly confident that maybe we would pull through. But it's just mental to think when we look at this Liverpool team. Like, this time last year, Liverpool were 9th or 10th or something like that. And honestly, it looked like the days of Jurgen Klopp and the Liverpool era, the sort of mentality monsters, how good Liverpool looked under Klopp in previous years. It looked like it was over. It looked like the end of an era. 7th season for Jurgen Klopp. Usually that's when, he leaves a football club as a manager. That's usually when it gets too much for him. And it looked like that way last year. And the similarities between Liverpool in Klopp's 7th season to Borussia Dortmund in Klopp's 7th season, or Mainz in Jurgen Klopp's 7th season, were very striking. It looked like Liverpool were over the hill. It looked like we need a massive rebuild, a massive clear out, and even if Liverpool were to go out and make multiple signings in the following summer transfer window, nobody ever would have expected Liverpool to be where they are right now. And look, we're only at the halfway point of the season, and obviously Liverpool are top of the league. They're in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, into the 4th round of the FA Cup, and still in the Europa League in the last 16, and probably will go far in that competition, you would imagine. Look, Liverpool might end this season trophyless. They might end up with absolutely nothing. They could get knocked out against Fulham in the Carabao Cup, although I would be surprised. They could get Manchester City away in the 4th round of the FA Cup, and to be fair, we have a huge history of getting very tough away draws in the FA Cup under Jurgen Klopp. And the Europa League, who knows, maybe we get caught somewhere along the way, and then the Premier League goes to shit and we end up with nothing. But considering where Liverpool were this time last year, like, the rebuild that Jurgen Klopp has done has honestly been nothing short of remarkable. And there's been so many changes to this Liverpool team this year in comparison to previous years, and even Jurgen Klopp, I think, has got better with his in-game management. I think he's become a better manager than he was in previous years, which we wouldn't have thought was possible considering what he'd done in the past, leading Liverpool to the Champions League, winning the Premier League for the first time in 30 years, obviously winning the League Cup and FA Cup in the same season that Liverpool also got to a Champions League final and finished 2nd to Manchester City. So you honestly didn't feel like Jurgen Klopp could get better. You felt like maybe was there any more in him that he could do with Liverpool, but honestly, this rebuild has been incredible. And that is going to be the topic of today's video. We're going to be looking at how Jurgen Klopp rebuilt Liverpool twice. Look, this rebuild is far from done, and obviously we don't know the outputs of this rebuild yet. Like, will Liverpool go on and win trophies? Will they go on and win major silverware? Of course, you have next year as well to blend in. I'm sure there's going to be more changes next summer, which will very much complete the rebuild, in my opinion. But if we judge Liverpool during Klopp's sort of first big period, or first big team that he built in comparison to this team, I honestly think there's some strong cases that this team could very well be better than the previous team. And I know that sounds crazy considering Liverpool won a Champions League under Klopp with that first team, and also finished, won the Premier League with 99 points. Firstly, if you're new to the channel, hit the like button and subscribe. I really do appreciate all the new subscribers that have come over to the channel. The video I made on True Geordie about a week ago has blew my mind a little bit, to be honest. Like, nearly 10,000 views on that video. About a third of my subscribers have come from just that video. So, like, yeah, just absolutely mental, to be honest with you. And I appreciate anyone who tuned in there. Like, obviously, the topic of today's video is Liverpool, and the last couple of videos have been about Liverpool, and obviously I am a Liverpool fan, but we do videos on other teams around here. I made a video on Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago. I made a video on Luton Town as well. Like, so there will be plenty of content on other videos, on other teams, and yeah, so don't, switch off if you think this is just Liverpool only, because there will be other videos on other teams and everything else coming soon. But anyway, if we cast our mind back to 2015, when Jurgen Klopp was appointed as Liverpool manager in October, Liverpool needed a massive, massive rebuild. Certainly a bigger rebuild than the one that was needed in the summer gone, because the Liverpool team right now still has plenty of quality, but the Liverpool team back then had very, very little quality, if we're being honest. Like, Liverpool were on the back of finishing 7th the season previous. They were absolutely atrocious. I mean, remember that final game against Stoke City, Gerrard's last game, where we lost 6-1. And going into the new season, the 2015-16 season, Brendan Rodgers was sacked eventually following a 0-0 draw with Everton. Klopp came in, and look, he had a huge amount of work to do right from the get-go. And when you look at where Liverpool finished in that season, in 8th place in the Premier League, it was pretty clear that this rebuild and Jurgen Klopp getting used to the Premier League, his way of playing, his style, his philosophy, his beliefs, were going to take a long time before they really came to fruition. However, there certainly were some signs in that first season that Liverpool were trending in the right direction. They obviously got to the Europa League final. They got to the Carabao Cup final as well. They didn't win either of them finals, but getting to those finals was in many ways an achievement, and even coming through Borussia Dortmund, for example, in the quarterfinals of the Europa League in the way that they did with that last minute goal from Dejan Lovren. There were some players from that team that would stick around for Liverpool's most successful years under Jurgen Klopp. You had Jordan Henderson, you had Adam Lallana, you had Roberto Firmino, you had James Milner. But the rest of them, very much, it was pretty clear, were not good enough. I mean, Coutinho was very good during his time at Liverpool, make no question about that. But even when Liverpool sold him a couple of years ago, even though I don't think they necessarily wanted to sell him, it was pretty clear that I actually think Liverpool became better after he left. In the 2016-17 season, which of course was the first full season under Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool signed Joel Matip and Sadio Mane as two key parts of the rebuild. You could see in the first full season the way Liverpool wanted to play. You could see the differences already between Liverpool in that season and the previous season, the way they were pressing, some of the results they got that year as well, albeit you could still see that Liverpool were miles off becoming the team that they wanted to be. But in saying that, they finished 4th, they got into the Champions League, and it was a step in the right direction. The 2017-18 season, however, was the season where we really started to see Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool really develop something special. And it was certainly the first time as a Liverpool fan in a long, long time where you felt like, I think we're really, really building something here. Liverpool signed Mohamed Salah in that summer transfer window in 2017. We all know the season he went on to have one of the best individual seasons in Liverpool's history. We signed Andy Robertson. Trent Alexander-Arnold came in to make his debut and really start to establish himself in that right-back position. Virgil van Dijk came in January, and the glue and the spine of Liverpool's team was starting to build, and you could see that there was definitely something building within Liverpool. We got to the Champions League final that year, lost to Real Madrid, unfortunately. Thanks, Karius. Sound. But you could see something was coming together. Even though Liverpool finished 4th, and again, the Premier League season was maybe a little bit underwhelming in terms of, we weren't challenging for any Premier Leagues or anything like that. But you could see something was being put together, and like some of Liverpool's results that season as well, some of the big performances, you thought, okay, like Liverpool are certainly moving in the right direction here. And then the 2018-19 season, my personal favourite as a Liverpool fan because of the Champions League win. And I know we won the Premier League a year later, but obviously we couldn't celebrate it because of COVID. So this was, of course, a very, very special season. And it was the year that Alisson came into the team. obviously following the disaster class by Karius in the Champions League final a couple of months previous. Fabinho came in, Naby Keita came in. Liverpool looked now like the finished article in many ways. And although there was certainly some options in terms of depth of their squad, maybe there was some more players that could come in to plug certain areas, you certainly looked at Liverpool and thought, this right here looks like the best version of Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. And that in many ways was the case. Liverpool won the Champions League. They finished with 96 points in the Premier League. Is actually 97 points in the Premier League, and incredibly somehow didn't win the Premier League that year. Thank you, Manchester City. Sounds, you just ruined the double on us there. But the Champions League was more than good enough, and you could see all the ingredients of Liverpool's team, the pressing, the way we were playing, the mentality monster style of Liverpool, which really became more and more evident this season. The way we dug it out against Barcelona, the late winner against Newcastle, late winner against Everton. So many late winners, late moments that would define this Liverpool team. And it was really where the mentality monsters thing really did come to fruition. I think when that term was first mentioned by Klopp and it became part of Liverpool's DNA, in many ways it was probably laughed at, but it started becoming more and more evident the more that Liverpool just kept grinding it out, kept digging it out, and ultimately went on to win the Champions League. And of course the 2019-20 season, another very special season. Liverpool won the Premier League, and they didn't make any signings in the summer transfer window. Very much the team Jurgen Klopp felt was very much complete. The only thing that was left to be done was, of course, winning the Premier League, which was, of course, the big one because Liverpool hadn't won it in 30 years. They achieved it, albeit during COVID and the disruption and everything else, but they absolutely walked their way to a league title. It was very comfortable. Man City had a very poor season and Liverpool cruised to the league title. Then we move on to the 2020-21 season, and this was really the year where the first sort of chinks in the armour of this Liverpool team were tested. Yes, there was injuries, yes, there was certain problems and everything else that happened, but Liverpool didn't go out and reinvest. They didn't go out and strengthen their team, and I think you can get away with not strengthening your team for one season when you're as good as Liverpool were, but I think if you don't strengthen, if you don't build off of what you already have, you run yourself the risk of everything falling apart. And for the majority of that season, that's what happened. Liverpool had multiple injuries to key players and fell off the grid completely. We did eventually manage to salvage things, finish in third place, and to be fair, some of the signings in that transfer window, in the summer transfer window, would come good. The likes of Thiago and Jota, for example, were two key players, but it was pretty clear Liverpool needed reinforcements in the midfield and Liverpool also needed reinforcements in defence. The 21-22 season was, it was a special season in many ways, watching Liverpool go all the way almost in every competition, won the League Cup, won the FA Cup, second in the Premier League, and then lost in the Champions League. You can't keep getting away with it! And even though things were going really well for Liverpool in that season, there was that cloud hanging over Liverpool in terms of Fabinho was getting on, Henderson was getting on, Van Dijk was getting on. You had Mohamed Salah's contract situation lurking in the background. Was Mane going to stick around? There was a lot of question marks over Liverpool, and you always felt like going into the next season, there was going to have to be a rebuild. There was going to have to be a thinking and a change in Liverpool, because it felt like in many ways 21-22 was the last push of that first team. And it really felt like, okay, we're going to need another centre-back. We're going to need more players coming in here to really try and evolve and get better, because 22-23, yeah. I mean, the less said about that season, the better. That was just where everything fell apart. And look, we did have a few injuries in the season, the likes of Diaz being out, the likes of Jota being out, but you had Sadio Mane, who left in the summer transfer window. Nunes came in, and we could all see was going to take time really to get up to speed with Liverpool and the Premier League. Mohamed Salah was still doing his thing, absolutely no question about that, but the midfield was a disaster. Henderson's legs had gone, Fabinho's legs had gone, and Liverpool completely neglected the areas of midfield that they needed to reinvest in. It was clear Liverpool needed an 8 in that midfield. Naby Keita was pretty much made of glass, so he was never available. Thiago was in now the side. Liverpool were just a mess. And another thing that happened as well with Liverpool last season was we spoke about Liverpool's mentality being so good on multiple different occasions. Their mentality last year was broke. Jurgen Klopp looked like a broken man at the best of times. And honestly, although Liverpool needed signings, it just looked like the end of an era. It looked like it was over, and it looked like Liverpool needed to freshen up. And Van Dijk in many ways didn't look the same player as he was. Trent was making so many errors. Andy Robertson was making big errors, and Liverpool just looked a complete shadow of themselves. But then towards the back end of the season, something changed. Against Arsenal, Liverpool put Trent Alexander-Arnold in midfield. They inverted him into a more midfield area, operating with more so of a back three in defence. And honestly, that completely has changed Liverpool pretty much ever since, because Liverpool have found an extra area of creativity in the centre of the field. Previously, Trent would create loads for Liverpool, but he'd do it on the flank, and I think that started to become very predictable. It meant that Trent was always way too far up the pitch, so it meant that he'd more space to cover when Liverpool were being hit on the counter-attack, for example, whereas when he was in the midfield, he could, first of all, he could create more, he'd more space to create things. Second of all, in those transitional areas in terms of being hit on the counter-attack, he could get back into position a lot quicker because he wasn't as far up the pitch. And he could also have a say in terms of trying to stop a counter-attack. And it's also worth mentioning that Trent was probably in his best position, and a lot of his defensive liabilities were not being as exploited because Liverpool now had a lot more cover at the back in terms of playing a back three. So it meant that Liverpool's shape was just a lot better in big games. And ultimately Liverpool missed out on the top four, fair enough. We missed out on the Champions League places. But then we got brought into this season, which going into this season, I mean, nobody really knew what to expect from Liverpool. Henderson left, Fabinho left. I mean, a complete change of the midfield. I mean, pretty much every senior midfielder left the football club, other than the likes of Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. Szoboszlai came in, Gravenberch came in, McAllister came in, Wataru Endo came in, and of all those signings, I think people were excited by the likes of Szoboszlai, Gravenberch and McAllister. I don't think anyone was really that excited with Endo, and coincidentally I think he's probably been actually our best midfielder along with Szoboszlai. And changing the midfield was all well and done, but you looked at our defence and you thought Matip, injury problems, Konate, injury problems, Joe Gomez, I wasn't entirely sure about. And he just felt like Liverpool, like they've gone to the well so many times. Do they have enough? Can Klopp reinstill the belief in this team? Can he get the best out of Núñez? Can Diaz and Jota stay fit? There were so many unknowns and so many question marks over Liverpool going into this season. You factor in as well that Manchester City won the treble last year, and they are probably riding the ultimate crest of a wave you ever can in football, and they're only going to go from strength to strength. Arsenal had improved, Man United had improved, Newcastle had improved, Aston Villa had improved. You had so many teams up and down the country improving, getting better, and you looked at Liverpool and you thought, fair enough, they've made a lot of changes to their midfield and everything else, but can they elevate themselves? Can they push on to better levels as they have in previous years? And look, the season is by no means over, but so far you would have to say the answer to that question is they have. And obviously the tactical changes made by Klopp have been genius in many ways, because when you look at Liverpool, I don't think mainstream media picks up on this a lot of the time, but when Liverpool are in possession, they actually play with a back three, and that's mainly, as it is right now, Konate, Van Dijk and Gomez. I think that's one of the reasons why Gomez has done so well, because he's not necessarily playing as a left back, he's actually more playing in a back three. When Liverpool are out of possession, Trent usually fills in and we operate more so in a back four. But those changes to Liverpool have been so key, because it's meant that Liverpool have had more control in the midfield. They've been able to control games a lot more, and their chance creation has gone up an absolute ton. The new signings of Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch have all brought energy about them, and Liverpool now have more options of scoring from midfield. I mean, Liverpool's previous midfield of Henderson, Fabinho, Milner, Jones, Chamberlain, I mean, we never really got goals from that midfield. I mean, Milner would score the odd couple of penalties, Fabinho would get the odd goal, Henderson would rarely ever score. And you look at this midfield and our midfield looks unleashed. Szoboszlai is scoring goals, McAllister's chipping away, Jones is even scoring. Like, Liverpool's midfield now can actually score goals, which in previous years didn't happen. But a big asset that's changed this Liverpool team, in my opinion, and I mentioned it earlier, is that mentality aspect of Liverpool is back. And I think people forget, even in the 1920 season when Liverpool won the Premier League that year, there were so many games where Liverpool just dug it out and won. Like, there were some times where Liverpool were absolutely brilliant, but there were some times where Liverpool would just find a way to get over the line. And Like, you can't always be at your absolute best in every game. Like, that cannot happen because it's impossible to think that way. It's illogical and it's just silly because if you're at your best every single game, then football's too easy, is it? You want to be at your best in the majority of the games that you play, but there's going to be times when you don't play well. And Liverpool, a lot of the time this season, have won games where they haven't played well and have come back from the dead in multiple occasions. And we mentioned it previously, the Newcastle game, they came from behind to win. Bournemouth at home, they came from behind to win. Wolves away, they came from behind to win. Crystal Palace, they came from behind to win. Manchester City, they came from behind to get a draw. And so many times they've looked in trouble, they've looked under the caution, and then they've found a way to dig it out. And that is, in my opinion, like, some people sometimes boil it down to luck, sometimes people boil it down to individual quality, but I think a lot of the time it's down to Klopp for instilling the belief in these players that even though things are going tough, you ride it out, you dig it out, and when you get your opportunity, you take it. I think Klopp's in-game management, though, has been one of his biggest improvements as a manager this year in comparison to previous years. And look, it might go down to the fact that I actually think Liverpool's options off the bench are a lot better than a few years ago. Like, even if you cast your mind back to the 1920 season or even the 21-22 season, where the options that Liverpool had coming off the bench a lot of the time were Lallana, Chamberlain, Minamino, Origi. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of these players had a lot of great moments in a Liverpool shirt, but the options nowadays are Jota. Sometimes it might be Gakpo. You've got midfield options to come off the bench, like the likes of Harvey Elliott, who looks even better than he has in previous years. You've got Gravenberch, who can come off the bench. Like, Liverpool's options off the bench have improved, and I do think that's lended into Klopp really being better with his in-game management. But some of his substitutions have been so key, and he's even been like changed the system mid-games and changed players around. And look, it only makes sense. Like, at the end of the day, Klopp, the more he manage, like, I think people do forget that he can get better as a manager, and managers can get better over time because it only makes sense. The more you manage, the better you can actually become. And I think we saw that with Klopp. We saw him make little changes, make little tweaks, and ultimately become a better manager. And honestly, like, considering this rebuild is not done, and considering there's been multiple times where Liverpool have not played well and won, there's been many times where Liverpool have played really well and obviously still won. And like, the finishing hasn't sometimes been there. The Newcastle game, for example, a couple of weeks ago, Man United at home, I thought we actually played reasonably okay in terms of chance creation. And you just look at this Liverpool team and you think, you add one more really top quality attacker, you add a centre-back, maybe you bring in another defensive midfielder because of the fact that Endo, although he's doing really well, I don't think is a long-term option. Honestly, I do think that this Liverpool team could possibly eclipse what we saw from Jurgen Klopp when they won the Champions League in 2019 and the Premier League in 2020. And the main reason for that is because, first of all, you have your star leaders and your great players already in the team, Van Dijk, Alisson, Salah. As long as Liverpool keep those players, and look, there might be an argument they might slow down in the next few years, but I think when we look at how much they've improved this year, even from last year, I think there's a case that they'll continue to grow, or at least stay at the same level that they were at. And you add those additions, like, I do think the sky is the limit for this Liverpool team. I really, really do. And like, don't get me wrong, it could all go tits up, and who knows, like, we'll probably end up with nothing, and maybe this video is a little bit silly in a couple of months' time. But I do think in 18 months and 2 years' time, we're looking at this version of this Liverpool team even more so, that, even better than the version of the Liverpool team, because like, as long as we reinvest, we bring in, centre-backs, and we bring in new players over the next few years, which I think we will do. And I think Jurgen Klopp's track record and signings, and obviously our sporting directors, which have changed over the last couple of years, have largely done a great job. I do think Liverpool can go places. I really, really do. And maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. But one thing I will say for certain is that the future is bright for Liverpool, and Liverpool fans should be excited, in my opinion, for 2024 and possibly even beyond that, because I do think big things are coming to this Liverpool team. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up in terms of how Jurgen Klopp rebuilt Liverpool twice. Let me know in the comments down below anything you think I missed in terms of any key points or anything like that. And do let me know, what do you think with Liverpool this season? Will they win the Premier League? Will they go on and win major trophies? Like, ultimately, I still think Man City win the Premier League, But I think the Carabao Cup and Europa League, I think, are more than winnable, in my opinion. Look, the FA Cup probably as well, to be fair. But obviously we have to wait and see with the draw. Like, if we get Man City away next, then, yeah, like, that might be a bit tough, do you get me? But do let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the video. Again, appreciate all the new subscribers coming to the channel, and hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. More videos, more content coming soon. My name is Aaron, and I'll see you when I see you.